Welcome back, everyone, to another DeFi Raiders AMA. My name is Relentless. I'm your host. Today, we're going to be talking to Gary from Gauss blockchain. Super cool project that they're building and working on, and something a lot of you might not have heard before. And for those of you who listen to this later, if you haven't heard of it, it's super cool. I actually got introduced to you guys through CryptoLink Tech. I was doing an AMA with Atlas, and we see Cletosaurus down in there. Thanks for joining in. And they had mentioned some of the work that they're going to be doing with you guys. So I started looking over the project, reached out to you. I'm glad we were able to get this worked out. So really excited to learn from you, and thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to talk with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, tell us a little bit about your role, and then a bit about how you got started in DeFi and what kind of led you to this project.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, I'm Gary. Um, my role with this is CEO, co-founder. We have a co-founding team of four of us, and we can get more into the team and all that stuff in a bit. What got me started with DeFi? So I've been in crypto since '09. I actually mined Bitcoin back in '09 when it was just a way for nerds to measure processing power and compare online. Much
I
like,
hope you help.
nope, gave them all away. They were worth nothing. I
Classic.
gave away hundreds of them on 4chan, random roll 42 thread. I have no regrets. You can't regret stuff like that. Nobody knew. I gave away something that at the time was, worthless. So it is what it is.
Hmm.
Um, but I've been in and out of it since then. Like I had a Coinbase. I started my first Coinbase account in 2014 when they first launched that, but haven't really been like in it, right, consistently until a couple years ago when we got started with Gauss. Um, and I think that's because I've always viewed it for that long period between them, between those years, as a very early technology, right? There were a very, very small community of users. We weren't nearing mass adoption, even in the 2018 bull cycle. There was a lot of hype around it, but it was still ultra niche and out in the wings. I think now we're getting to the point when we got started with Gauss, it was like, this is the cycle. This is when we're going to start seeing the ramp up into mass adoption. Like 2024 will be the next big wave. We'll probably see up to 10% adoption at that point, end of next year. So yeah, that's briefly how I got into this. Looking at the market and timing of things, because I think timing is a larger indicator of success than almost anything else. I think it was Bill Gross had a TED talk about that. Anyway,
Yeah, I'd say that's very accurate. My timing was kind of towards the end of the bull run, and I came into GameFi, and then it all kind of went downhill. So I had terrible timing, but a heck of a way to learn, I'll tell you that. Um, so no complaints. Well, complaints, yes, but no regrets there really. Um, so don't want to be clear about that. I do complain about losing money for sure.
well, I
All
mean,
right,
yeah,
cool.
and it happens when you're early on the bleeding edge of something. You know,
Oh yeah, and especially when you don't understand something. I mean, my buddy was like, "Yeah, you can make a bunch of money," and I did make some money off some of the game stuff, which I'm excited to talk to you about some of the game stuff you guys are doing too. But um, and then I like, I found like yield farming and all these degen plays, and I just did not know what I was doing with that, and that's what really killed me for a while there. But managed to stop the bleeding, um, and so everything's on the up and up there for the most part. So, but like I said, good luck. That's what really led me to understand it and get that knowledge.
yeah.
And so, with the knowledge,
I'm not sure if you're
me.
cutting out
So,
or if I'm cutting out. Anyone in chat?
um,
I see Panda typing. Yeah, you're cutting out
all right,
periodically.
one second, I can fix that.
Close and reopen, leave and rejoin. Common solutions.
All right, let's try this again. How do I sound now?
Better for the moment. We'll see.
All right. Yeah, just tell me if I am. Cut me off. I don't understand the point of putting this Eero mesh network in my house if it's going to still have problems. But, all right.
It's going to have
Good
tech
so far?
problems. Yep, we're good.
All right, cool. Well, since we know a little bit about you, all right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the rest of your team. How'd you guys all meet, start working together, and like in the team background?
Yeah. So, as I said, I'm CEO and co-founder. I can give a quick general background about myself. I'm a Marine veteran. I've started a number of companies throughout my life. My first one being at the age of 12, actually incorporated an LLC, ran for 20 years profitably, provided for my family, all that good fun stuff. Joined the Marine Corps shortly out of high school. Last 10 years before the pandemic, I was in the event and entertainment industry. And then in the pandemic, started Gauss. Pat is our CFO. Pat and I have actually known each other since I was in high school. Didn't know one another well. We ended up working together in 08, 09, somewhere in that ballpark, at a small tech company. And have just kept in touch ever since. Lauren is our CSO, Chief Science Officer. We worked together, 5-ish years ago, and periodically throughout. Known each other for about 10 years. She's actually a data scientist and a geologist. Austin is our CTO, our lead developer. He and I have known each other also about a decade and have worked together periodically throughout the years. So I believe I am extraordinarily fortunate to have been able to, assemble an all-star team. I mean, Pat's been a C-suite executive for 3 decades of large companies handling billion-dollar tech companies, cybersecurity, defense, a lot of other stuff. He has a long, long laundry list of accolades. The rest of the team, we have 23 of us total right now. Just about everyone's part-time. We're still in the, very early stages of fundraising and everything. So if you go check out our team page, you can see just about everyone on the team. Panda, if you wanted to link that, that'd be awesome. Our CMO is Mac. He's worked in Hollywood entertainment industry and marketing. So he has a pretty diverse background that also aligns well with what we're doing, what we're building. Who else? John is our VP of growth and strategy. His background was in growth and strategy previously with a med tech company, medical tech. His background is actually neuroscience and biology, but he has a strong understanding of the corporate world, right? Part of the reason that he fits well. He actually also owns his own music festival. It's happening in April. Gerard's our in-house counsel. Amazing dude, also has a background in cybersecurity. Derek's our project manager for curation, which is a huge cornerstone part that we'll get into when we talk about what Gauss is. And yeah, a bunch of others. We have a really awesome team overall that I'm super excited to work with and looking forward to bring them all on full time and expanding the team further. So that's some of our team. And 2 of us actually have family members on the team too. I have my sister on board. She's handling our bookkeeping and all that stuff. Alicia, she's our executive administrator. And Jessica Truesdale is Gerard's sister, which I think it's interesting working with family. If you can convince a number of people to join you on an insane journey, especially people who've known you for decades or know the best and worst of you, like your sister. I think
Yeah,
that's
for
pretty
real.
solid.
Yeah,
So
that is pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, so wealth of experience. First, thanks for serving, brother, from one to another. I'm a former Army Ranger. I'm still active duty.
Oh, nice.
Mixed wizard down there in the crowd. We were Rangers together back in the day. So appreciate that. Hoorah, Devil Dog. Um,
Sure.
so it's actually kind of crazy how many other veterans I've connected with. A guy that we hosted the other day that I'm super connected with, Life Eternal. He's a former Marine, does a ton of project management, ton of GameFi stuff. Former professional WoW player. I could probably introduce you guys if you want some, looking for anything else on the game DAO side. Dude understands it at just another level.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah,
I think
absolutely happy to
because
do that.
we're an adaptable bunch, I think is a big
Mhm.
part of it, right? You're trained to overcome adversity, charge gunfire, and adapt to challenges. And I think that's something you need as an entrepreneur or a leader. Um, so it's interesting. I agree. I've seen a number of other vets though.
Yep, adaptability and work ethic. That's what I've really
Yep.
seen. So, and it's cool to be able to connect with them as well.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so very impressive team, super cool. All right, so let's kind of get into Gauss then. So you want to go ahead and give us a high level overview of what Gauss is and kind of what you're aiming to achieve?
Yeah. So when we got started with this, right, we were looking for pain points that we could solve. We thought we could find a solution for. And there were a number that kept occurring or recurring, being scams, lack of accountability, no protection for brand and IP or end users. And that's where, like, that intersection is where we started building with Gauss. And I think the easiest solution to that is to build a curated ecosystem where before anyone can launch with us, they have to go through a vetting process. This is for smaller businesses or projects, right? A Fortune 1000 or known brand has a different onboarding pipeline, but yeah, that's kind of the simple version of what Gauss is, a curated ecosystem. In my opinion, if you look back at the internet, the 80s, 90s of it, it was a very Wild West space. Nobody thought it was going to be anything. There was a lot of scams, fraud, BS happening there. Um, Same thing with early e-commerce. In the 90s, nobody wanted to put their credit card online. For anyone that's, roughly my age, we all remember that until you had trusted platforms that came about, things like PayPal and whatnot, where you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to get scammed or screwed. So that works. And I think we'll see similar evolution utilizing this new technology. I often say that Gauss isn't, a crypto project or a blockchain project. We are a tech startup. We're a business. The technology we're utilizing is blockchain, but we're no more a crypto, business than Google, Amazon, or Facebook or internet businesses, right? They're advertising or e-commerce. That's their primary business. Um, so that at a high level is what Gauss is. We have a lot of other stuff that we want to do and build and innovate, which I think are other benefits we'll get being a centralized layer one. If you look at Ethereum, it took them 5 years to get to where they are. Uh, ETH 2.0 took how long to roll out, and so much of that got shelved. If it was a company updating their own layer one ecosystem, that should have only take 6 months of development and testing and then rolling it out realistically for the amount of changes that they made. So I think there's a lot of benefits that come from building the way we're building, um, and where we're headed with everything.
Yeah, very cool. So, essentially you're just um, a project using blockchain and making it safer for real world businesses to move to the blockchain, and then also obviously safer for the end users.
Correct.
which is really cool.
Yep.
All right.
And I
So,
think just as one other note, like I do support and believe in both open source software and decentralization for what they exist to be, right? They are sandboxes that are unregulated and they should exist. Um, but I do think there's a better way to reach mass adoption, right? Like you're never going to get rid of scams on Ethereum or Polygon. They're just not built for it, right? There are going to be spaces without accountability. They're lawless zones. And I think that's important to exist, but 98% of people aren't going to want to transact in that ecosystem, right? So, I'm sorry for that little caveat there, but not sorry.
oh no, you're good. Yeah, I mean that's tired of the rugs, and there were so many of them. For I mean, there was obviously a point where it didn't matter if something rugged because the same type of project launched 2 minutes later and didn't rug, right? So no one really cared. But now with the downturn in the market and the amount of rugs and the amount of money people are losing, people don't want to deal with that anymore. So I mean, that's
Right.
fair. You know, it's that this in order for mass adoption to happen, this has to evolve away from that lawlessness in order for people to really take it seriously.
Yeah. And I mean, for
So
large brands, like I've used this example so many times, but you have Nike, Starbucks, other companies that are, either testing the waters or kind of going full in the case of Nike, like they bought up Artifact. But looking at Starbucks, if they were able to move 10% of their rewards, loyalty, app sales, gift card, all that stuff into Polygon, which looks to be their plan for the pilot, that's $800 million of revenue, right? That they're moving on chain. If 10% of that ends up being users that are scammed, that's an $80 million bloody nose or black eye to Starbucks. They'll touch the stove, burn their hand, and pull out and try to
mhm.
find another way. And whether or not it's Starbucks or some other large brand, it's going to happen. And it's going to happen a bunch. And then they're going to look for solutions like Gauss. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, first question I kind of want to ask is what is a curated blockchain? What does that mean to anyone who's coming to look at your project and wants to understand it? And then what problems does it solve for both the builders and the end users of the products that are built on top of it?
yeah. So, the concept here is us doing a significant amount of due diligence for new projects that want to launch. Like right now, we have one going through our curation pipeline that is a game, blockchain based game. And we want to look at the people behind it who has access to any of the wallets or bank accounts, all of that stuff. And that's both an internal and a third party process, right? So to explain the curation steps, they apply, then we go through a quick internal review. It should take about an hour or two per person with 3 different people looking at it. And we give an assessment based on that. From there, we either greenlight them to continue or tell them they need to work on some things or just a, flat out no. You have a hyperinflationary Ponzi scheme. We don't want any part of it. Um, if they continue on, they go through a KYB process. So we get their real names, identification, a lot of other information like KYC, but for knowing who is behind a project. They also go through a legal review to go through any documentation they might have, shareholder agreements, incorporation docs, like all the typical due diligence that you see in the business world. Um, then we go through tokenomics review if they have tokenomics, because I think we can identify a significant amount of problems just by looking at that at a high level and potentially help them build something that'll be more long-term sustainable if they're willing to adjust. After those steps, they go through a final internal review, and then we give them the green light to announce the launch. The reason the process is set up that way is because a lot of projects won't have their smart contracts ready to be audited for months potentially afterwards, especially games, right? Games are on a 12 to 18-ish month life cycle for development usually. So they might be 12 months after approved to launch before we see their smart contracts. So that's, the steps. But everything with Gauss will go through that process. With the other side of it being the larger existing brands, right? Like name a musician, they would go through the other onboarding process, which is more business like, just agreeing to whatever deal with that business to launch with us. Another part of this, because the second part of your question was, how does that help builders and end users, I believe? Yes.
That's correct.
Um, so part of this also means that we're going to be able to help these projects be set up for success. We'll be launching an incubator and accelerator platform, not a launch pad. I think launch pads are very useful in the decentralized world, very hands off. You just go through the thing and they help reach an audience. I want to identify holes or areas of weakness within those teams and the projects. Like perhaps they need some organizational or operational, assistance. They might need a fractional CEO or a co-CEO to come help build that project with them. Or they might need marketing or legal or financial or whatever other assistance. I want to see every project launching with Gauss succeed. And to do that, I want to make sure that they have all the tools that we can provide them to succeed. For end users, I think gating the ecosystem at that level creates a just much higher quality, high integrity ecosystem where they don't have to worry about everything all the time. Like in the decentralized space, you don't know what the hell you're getting into 99% of the time. Projects that might not seem like they're going to rug. We just had one a handful of months back. They had what looked like a solid team on paper. They had, and they were all doxed. They had like Ivy League educations and all that stuff. And they ended up sweeping a $1 million loss under the rug. They didn't rug. Somebody stole their money. They got hacked by their developer. And like, that's unfortunate, right? With us, we as the protocol, the layer one, will be holding projects and everyone else in the ecosystem accountable. Imagine what that looks like at scale when we have thousands of projects and millions of users. Having a large entity that can hold them legally accountable for their actions, I think, is also not just a solid deterrent, but a solid barrier protection for the end users. Another thing that we're going to be doing differently than everyone else is we're launching everyone's initial liquidity. So we're also removing the possibility of somebody rugging right out the gate. I think that's an interesting and novel step. That amount will end up varying if they're tokenized projects. It might be 10% or 20% of their total that we pair with Gang to launch with liquidity until we get to the Omni pool, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's a lot of different checks and balances here. It's not just, we're looking at the projects under a microscope and saying yes or no and then hoping everything works out well. It's a lot, and I think doing it all right from the foundational step and every brick that we build with Gauss will pay massive dividends, not necessarily financial dividends, but quality dividends over the long term. So
Yeah, very cool. Very well thought out. Lots of ways to protect end users and the projects themselves, and that is super novel to be doing that stuff with the liquidity, which is kind of cool. And then I mean, what kind of runway do you guys have to have for that, or what kind of runway do you have in order to support projects currently?
well, I mean, so that's one of the benefits of being a layer one ecosystem, right? We have our native token. We're distributing a certain amount with sales of NFTs to get them out there to raise capital and things like that. But like one of the pros and cons, because everything has pros and cons, right? One of the pros for being a fully decentralized ecosystem is you have tens of thousands of free builders, right? Whatever their quality is, you still have tens of thousands of people building there. We don't have that. So early on, we have to incentivize a lot of people to build. One of the ways is saying, okay, well, we'll put up, 500,000 or $1 million worth of gang to pair with your token for liquidity, removing their need for liquidity initially. Um, some of that may end up working like Dutch auction token sales. We'll see. I think it's not just going to be a one solution thing. But to answer your question about Runway more directly, um, we've raised about 350 grand so far. We were bootstrapped up until July of last year when we started selling NFTs. And the NFTs are a novel solution for fundraising and token distribution, which again we can get into later in the conversation. But yeah, hope that answered that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, absolutely, very cool. Okay, so one of the things that when I think about when you kind of talk through the process of a project coming to you and the steps that they have to go through to work with you, right? So what you have, and I know this is geared more towards bringing businesses, right? But you also, are geared towards crypto native projects as well. So this kind of brings the conversation around security, anonymity, and then like all this, the problems. We have KYC, right? But what does that actually mean currently to people when there is no accountability, right? How does your project look at builders who value their anonymity and privacy? Are they able to work with you, or what's the process there?
Yeah, they are. They can be publicly anonymous. Obviously, our third party KYB provider will have all their documentation. Once that provider verifies that, yes, these people are real, these are their real IDs, all that stuff, then we can sign the agreements with those people and still maintain their anonymity. Gauss will not be holding their identifying documents. We'll have their names and whatnot, but that's not something we'll necessarily be disclosing. So I'm fine with public anonymity. I mean, I fully support and believe people should dox, but I do know there are also plenty of situations where that's not an ideal. Uh, like I know somebody in crypto in Russia. I also know somebody in crypto in Ukraine. And I think both of them have very fair and valid reasons for wanting to be digitally anonymous, right? Um, and I support that. So
Yeah, cool. Makes a lot of sense. I think, understanding like, hey, we may not know who it is, but someone does, and there's systems in place to hold these people accountable if they try to do some of those things is really cool.
right.
And
Yeah, and I mean if the
really,
worst
really
happens,
reassuring.
yeah, if the worst happens, right, and we have to pursue legal action or worse, criminal action, um, like those are steps that we can follow because we have that third party provider, right? That at that point, we take that information and go to our internal legal team and external law firms and say, hey, well, we're going to be suing these guys for damages within our ecosystem because that's something else, right? As a business, anyone that defrauds the users of Gauss has harmed our business and that of all of our clients and their users, right? That causes real harm. And that's something we want to take very seriously. Also, in this whole thing, we accept an amount of legal liability, right? We're saying we're providing a safe space. Um, where that begins and ends, we'll figure that out, over time, I'm sure, as it gets tested in courts. But we know we're accepting an amount of liability here, right? Which I think is another interesting uh, facet to all of this and what we're building in this whole space.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, very cool. All right, so let's kind of start to talk about the project and the kind of the ecosystem here. So how does the ecosystem operate for users and projects, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, For right now, it's going to resemble much of what everyone is already used to. Um, it's a blockchain. We're going to have a swap. You're going to have crypto wallets. It'll work with MetaMask, and we'll work on more integrations over time for crypto wallets. It's an EVM compatible chain. So we'll be able to connect with any of the other chains that we want or need to. We'll have USDC in the ecosystem. So for right now, it'll resemble much of the experience that everyone's used to with Polygon and Ethereum or Solana or Phantom or pick a chain. Down the road, I think it will begin falling. Like, nobody cares about how the internet works, right? If you were to poll your community or listeners in general, who cares that TCP/IP was invented, or that IPv4 came about, or that we kind of sort of had a half-assed upgrade to IPv6? Nobody cares. Like, literally nobody cares. You just want the internet to work for you, right? You want to be able to go to a website or open an app or whatever. That's what you care about as an end user. Down the road, Gauss will likely be gasless, not because, we're removing transaction fees or it'll be free to be within Gauss's ecosystem, but because it's one more hurdle that we get to remove from end users. Let's say that Pepsi launches with Gauss. They launch Pepsi Coin on Gauss. They want to do everything in app. Right now, we would either have to whitelist them to, have zero gas with everything they're doing, or create some other ham-fisted solution where we're pulling Gang, our native coin, from a pool to pay all the transactions within, their Pepsi coin swapping. Down the road, it just needs to go away. There's a lot of vestigial parts of this as a technology that made or still kind of make sense, but won't in 5 and 10 years. Like, part of the reason gas makes sense in an ecosystem is to prevent hundreds of thousands of spam transactions. Well, Polygon already has hundreds of thousands of spam transactions every day. Their gas fees aren't getting rid of that because they're fractions of a penny. So a lot of the benefits of gas could just be done away with, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. Think it's cool that you're doing gasless. I was gonna kind of touch on that, but
Well, not
yeah, it makes a ton
initially.
of sense.
Yeah, down the road.
Yeah,
We'll
eventually, yeah, you're working towards it. Yeah.
It's something we're looking at for this relaunch, but it's just a slight bridge too far. Again, the problems with working with existing technologies is that what people don't see is that there are band-aids on band-aids on band-aids within blockchain technology, because it's been built by tens of thousands of people in a very decentralized manner. Imagine if you brought in 100 people to rebuild a car. Each of them were only there for 5-10 hours a week. Nobody was getting paid. Sure, the car might come out beautiful, but I think you'd be better off with a restoration shop handling it inside of a month and paying for it, right? Um, you don't know the quality of everything that's happening everywhere. There might be some bad welds. You don't know. So,
Yeah. Yeah, 100% makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's kind of talk about what Gauss does here. Because what I got on the page, and it's all the things about projects and building brands. So let's kind of talk about that, right? So what is it that you can do for a brand, right? A brand reaches out, they want to know how you can help them. What's kind of your pitch there? What do you tell them that, hey, we can take your project and we can do this with it?
well, so the way these conversations have been going thus far is we usually go on fishing expeditions with the brands to figure out what their goals are, what the hell they want to do. Right. I think that's first and foremost the important aspect, because I don't think this is going to be a solution that's right for everyone right now. I do think it'll be more ubiquitous in 5 and 10 years, but it depends. It really, really depends. I have a meeting next week, and we'll be talking. I'm very, very cagey about talking about things publicly. We'll be talking about the brands that this agency represents and how we can launch different aspects, right? For them, they have one brand under their representation in their catalog that would do really, really well with digital wearables, for example, right? So you have an avatar that you can buy clothes or masks or whatever for, and then use that avatar in games. I think that'll be a powerful thing for them. That same brand also has events that could benefit from NFT ticketing, which has a whole myriad of significant use cases over the lifetime of a brand's IP. And how long has that singular brand been around? I'm Googling
I
while we're talking. That wasn't a
go
question
for it.
to you. So they've been around since 95. Um, so that's 28 years, almost 3 decades that they've been around, and I suspect that their brand will be around for decades more to come. There's another brand that we're gonna be talking with who's been around, I think, 5 decades now. Um, I can say that those are musical acts. I can say that much. Um, but yeah, it all depends because that's a very different use case than, say, a film 3 project, which I think is another interesting avenue that people are starting to explore and build with. Gala has a whole division now that they're working towards that end with, and I think that's interesting. But then you have CPG or consumer packaged goods like Pepsi or whatnot. Their reward and loyalty programs could be really interesting to roll out. Pepsi Coin, I use that as an example because everyone kind of knows already what it is, right? I think the benefit of doing those things on chain, though, one, they get to get a lot more information. I think they can also more successfully reward their strongest users. You know, if you accidentally, or not accidentally, but mistarget something, give users 1 through 100 Pepsi coin, but they're not really Pepsi adopters or consumers, they're going to sell those, or swap them, and they'll end up in the hands of your actual audience. And I think that's a powerful thing because right now, most rewards and loyalty programs look at putting out, call it 1,000 of something, and only 500 of those will be redeemed, right? They bank on that right now. And I think that's an inefficient way of marketing with that tool set. So, to answer your question more directly, is the answer is Legion. We're a platform, right? What do you want to see? What do you want to build? 50 Cent want to launch another video game? We can do that. You can launch it with us. It actually wasn't a great game back in back in the early, or before 2010, I think it was.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Blood and Sand. He was a client of the company that Pat and I worked for together. Um, interesting, interesting thing.
Yeah, you can't blame him though. He's always looking
Oh
for ways to
no,
make money.
no. Yeah, there's
So
zero.
he's a businessman.
Yeah, I mean, he bought a controlling share in Vitamin Water right around the same time, and then I think it got sold to Coca-Cola, and he probably made a mint on that. Um, yeah, not faulting him at all for it. It was just interesting. That's all. Weird little nostalgic memory that popped up.
Yeah, a little trip down memory lane. Yeah, see, I mean, you guys are just a super diverse project that can work with a ton of different projects. And we'll kind of, talk about a little bit of the gaming and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you guys are super diverse. Um, and it's super cool how you can tailor to all these different models and everything. I think that's obviously a testament to the skills of your team and the experience you have there. But it's just kind of kind of wild to see this launching and being able to, appeal to such a huge market of traditional type of businesses. And I think it's kind of wild and super cool.
Yep. Yeah. And looking forward to where we're going to be in 5 and 10 and 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So what then kind of, I guess, what are you looking for? What are the differences? Because you have different, if I remember reading correctly, you have different kind of approaches to crypto native projects as opposed to like a traditional brand. So what are kind of the differences in what you're looking for with each of them?
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate to say that if I were to, if every project out there in crypto were to apply to Gauss, we would likely accept less than 2% of them. And I think that's even being generous. Um, there's not significant value or benefit in the long term with a great many of them, right? Stake and get money, like that's your thing. Um, like, I don't know. So crypto native projects are going to have a higher barrier with us, right? Just out the gate. I don't want to see a Ponzi scheme, right? There's no point. You have every other decentralized chain you can run your Ponzi scheme on. I'm happy for you. Don't screw over your people. They're going to get screwed over. Not happy for them. I don't know. Blockchain games, I think, are a really interesting aspect that we're super looking forward to. I think there's endless use cases and utility and value there. I've always like viewed the ability to own like really own your things in game as being something that I as a gamer have always wanted, and being able to sell or swap or trade them, right? Like World of Warcraft, and there have been plenty of others that have had very healthy in-game economies or interesting in-game economies, like Diablo 2 and Stone of Jordans is the in-game currency. Um, I don't, however, like with every iteration that we've seen throughout the decades of in-game economies, like you don't own any of that, right? I have 2 World of Warcraft accounts that I've had since beta. Played vanilla, Burning Crusades. I don't own those characters. They got hacked. I lost everything on both characters. I'll never play World of Warcraft again because of it. Like I lost tier 4 loot for anyone who's played WoW. Um, that's, unfortunate. But even if I didn't lose it all, right? Or I kept it all, like EVE Online or Anarchy Online, plenty of other games. Those characters, those items, I never owned them. I never, could do anything with them outside that game. I think interoperability between games will be amazing in the future. I'm going off in the weeds a little bit. Back to your question, ask that question again to make sure I answered it somewhere in that.
I was, yeah, you did. It was just kind of what you're looking for. And I mean, you basically said it that you're looking for quality projects and quality people, and
Yeah,
that's kind of going to be the vetting process with both regular businesses and crypto native projects.
yeah.
So,
And to the point
yeah,
on
so makes sense.
regular Yeah, to the point on regular businesses, there was an NBA player who came out with an NFT project. They raised a few million. He was supposed to do a whole bunch of stuff with it, kind of got bored and said, you know what, I'm going to drop this. I don't remember who it was, but, you know, that's something we don't want to see. There needs to be real value and utility. There will be large brands that we say no to, right? It could be their business practices or ethics or whatever else. Like that's something that we get to do for better or worse because everything has pros and cons, as I said. But there's, right out the gate, we're saying no to anything that's doing political campaign, fundraising. That's not something we need to do with Gauss right now. It would bring more headaches than it's worth. Porn is another one. The adult industry as a whole is something that I think could benefit from being done well on chain with an ecosystem like Gauss, but it's also not something we're doing at this time. And likely down the road would probably have its own 18 plus chain for that sort of thing, right? Um, but yeah, like you said, it's about looking at value and quality.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So, last kind of little question, and then we want to really get into kind of the features and the tokenomics and the NFTs and all that stuff. Is just what kind of interest have you guys seen so far from different companies and different crypto projects?
So this is an interesting one. I don't actually know that I've answered this one on an AMA before or anything like it, but um, we've fairly quietly came out of stealth earlier this year. Sam and I from Sphere Finance had been talking for a while about partnering together on some stuff, and we leaned into their community to launch, and it still have significant overlap between our communities and other projects in the orbits of us. um, I think I initially expected more pushback from people saying, no, everything must be decentralized, this, that, and the other, without really fully understanding what decentralization even is. I'll touch on that in a second. But it was positive. We're also not paying a bunch of influencers for hollow hype posts or reviews. That's certainly a way to build a community or to build a following, but it's not our way. It's not how we want to do it. It's not substantive. You end up building a community with the wrong goals, right? You have a lot of people who come in just to make a quick buck and then they're gone. And that's not what we want. We want a higher quality community as well. So that's been really awesome and interesting. I love the hell out of our community. They're amazing. And then on the business and project side, um, the vast majority of it's been positive. You do see some other crypto projects who have that same thing, like, oh, well, we're never leaving Ethereum or whatever. That's great. I'm happy for them. Businesses, though, we get lots of positive conversations. The downside with working with large businesses, from SMB up, especially once you hit the like billion plus revenue mark as a business, um, the timelines just take longer, right? From initial conversation to execution of an agreement to even announce publicly that you're working together can be 3, 6, 9 months. Those are very long timelines. Um, but, you know, we're what most of them want to see. From every conversation I've had thus far, they want Gauss or something like it to exist for them to, build on. This is what they want. So I think that's, vindicating, super positive, and I think that answers your questions. I wish I could tell you specifically which ones we're in talks with or at different steps with and whatnot. But I'm thoroughly against that as well. I think it's unethical to pump that publicly, to use that, uh, until those deals are signed, they're not done, right? They could go to nothing. None of them could happen. Out of 100 conversations or hundreds of connections that we have, they could all mean nothing. So that. Before we move on to the next one, I did want to say something about decentralization, only because I touched on it, and it's been a point I've harped for a long time. Um, I have a question for you, Relentless. How
Okay, go for
decentralized
it.
how decentralized do you think Ethereum or Polygon is?
Well, it's hard for me to say that anything is truly decentralized when you know the handful of people are running it. You know what I mean? Um, so I mean, on the grand scale, I don't think it's as decentralized as some might advertise it to be, for sure.
Right. And I think that's, unfortunate and remarkably disingenuous. Like they started out fully decentralized, right? Bitcoin was literally just a bunch of nerds, measuring hash rates against one another. Um, Now, though, you have institutional money or wealthy individuals who are involved in those things and who have bought up significant chunks of them. Like 90% of most crypto is in 10% of holders' hands. And for validators or miners, those end up being controlled by the same types of individuals or groups, right? They have money. So it's not decentralized, right? Like, how much does it cost to launch a validator on Ethereum now? Like 30, 40 grand, somewhere in that ballpark. 32 ETH, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's a
That
lot of money.
Right. That's not your average person. That's not decentralized. Not at all. So I think it's remarkably disingenuous. And Polygon, I love a lot of what they're building. I love them as a group. I would say as a business, but you know, they're a business that says, "Yeah, we're fully decentralized, this, that, and the other," and like 42% of their initial allocation went to the team and internal founders and things like that. That's a lot, you know. Um, it's just something that I think that we as a community need to be more honest in conversation about, especially when looking at something like Gauss. Yeah, we're centralized. We're just honest about it. And
Yeah, it's a fair point. Very fair point. I don't think anyone has truly been able to really perfect a true decentralized model. I do think that like the synthetics Spartan Council is pretty good. It's a pretty good model, but you know, even then there's still a level of centralization that's always going to happen. So no, I think it's good at least that you own it, you're open and honest about it, and how you're trying to do business. So
Yep.
all right,
also,
so
I know that we had an hour scheduled. I'm fine on time, so
oh, I'm
we
good to
can
go.
yeah, we can work through the rest of the questions and the community's questions as well.
All
Just
right, cool.
wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in no rush. I mean, my wife will probably yell at me later, but I'll just close the door again. It's fine. What's she gonna do? Divorce me? Um, so let's hope not. Let's hope not. Um, all right, so cool. Let's kind of talk about what I want to dive into some of the features that you guys have going, kind of what you're most excited about. I mean, the Omni Pool, super cool. Noble Swap, you guys are going to have a 2.0 version of that. The gaming DAO, just kind of, what are you super excited about? What do you want the community to know about?
Yeah, so we can start with Noble Swap. As I said before, Noble Swap is very similar to any swap you've seen or used. Basically, they're all clones of Uniswap. This one being a clone of PancakeSwap, actually. Uh, God, their code base is a mess, but it's functionally the same thing. Um, Nothing groundbreaking there. Uh, Same XYK swap model. The 2.0 stuff does start to get cooler. You mentioned the Omni Pool. It's one of the cooler pieces of Gauss that we will be building. So, for anyone not familiar, presently the way swaps work, you have paired assets usually. So, token A, token B, that form a liquidity pool between the two. And if you have 1,000 different tokens in your ecosystem, you now have thousands of buckets of liquidity, small buckets of liquidity. What the Omni Pool will do is create one literal, large, vast ocean or galaxy or whatever you want to call it of liquidity so you can swap between any of the two assets directly and act as if, rather than having thousands of buckets with $100 million of USDC spread across them, everything could be swapped against that same, significant set of liquidity. And there are challenges to overcome with all of this, but there are a few existing omnipool systems out there that are in testing or early small launches, things like that. Super interesting, though. I'm really excited to build that and explore how it'll improve capital efficiency, how it'll improve gaming on chain, all sorts of different things. Lots of benefits there. The gaming DAO is super interesting. Yes, we're very centralized, but I do think having community involvement with everything we're doing with Gauss is very, very, very important. So much so that we'll be building a DAO to oversee and help manage all gaming within the Gauss ecosystem. And I have my own ideas of how a DAO. By the way, I also hate the term DAO. I hate cryptocurrency as a term too. But DAOs aren't decentralized, they're not autonomous, and they're hardly organizations. So, this gaming DAO, to use the term that's fairly ubiquitous in a community anyway for now, um, they'll look at games running in the ecosystem and say, this might need a balance change or whatever the community wants to see changed or tweaked, or perhaps something needs an audit. Right, a game's been in development for 2 full years, and the community wants to know, they can vote on having an audit done, and Gauss might step in as the protocol and say, okay, let's look into this and see what's happening. I think that's a super powerful tool. If you look at most games, most successful games, they're only successful because they have a strong community. World of Warcraft is that way. Banished is an interesting game on Steam that is largely supported because they have a very strong modding community. Like, modding communities build games to be something that are far beyond what their developers could have hoped for. So the gaming DAO is super interesting, and there's a lot of other things. How not deep into the weeds we want to go. Some of the other technological elements that I've talked about in AMAs previously. One of the coolest being our NFT protocols. Don't want to get too deep into those right now, but the AI translation layer is a technology that I think will be necessary for the eventual advent of metaverses, right? The ability for the end user to take any item from any virtual environment into any other, that will be a necessary pillar, right? If you look at Ready Player One and their Oasis, you have those players bringing a single character into multiple virtual environments, playing different games. Like, they go into The Shining, the movie, to experience that with their in-game avatars. That is something that'll be necessary for the metaverse, in my opinion. Something we're looking forward to building, something I think the public can finally start to see the actual possibility of with things like ChatGPT, all of the generative AIs that have been coming out, Stable Diffusion for image generation, and now video and 3D modeling generation, all of that stuff. It's all gearing toward the same inevitable, what I view as inevitable outcome. A lot of the things that we're going to be building, I think, are going to exist whether or not we build them. I just want us to build them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you know it's coming, why wouldn't you want to try to be first? And and not that being first is always the best, because sometimes when you're first, you have a rushed, terrible product. But if you know it's coming and you have the ability to build it, why wouldn't
Right.
you build
Think
it?
best, not
So,
first. Google was, the 18th or 20th or whatever search engine to launch. They're doing all right.
yeah, yeah, not bad, not bad. And I think what you're talking about with being able to move things around the metaverse and from one game to another and all that stuff is a super far vision to be thinking about and trying to build towards, and understanding the evolution of where GameFi needs to go, and how gaming and crypto needs to go. So, yeah, you guys are definitely thinking way
Oh
forward,
yeah.
and how you're trying to build things. Yeah, which is super cool. Um, and I mean, there's tons of struggles with GameFi. You know what I mean? You've seen a million flop, and then some that are doing well. I get to interview Illuvium later this month, which would be super cool. I'm super excited to hear from them. It's just like to watch people actually be able to capture the gaming side of this and implement it and make it something sustainable. I'm super intrigued by.
Yeah.
And it's going to capture such a massive share of the population. Um, when it's done right. So very cool. All right, thanks for kind of the rundown on all the cool features that you're excited about. So I guess next let's kind of move into kind of the tokenomics of your project, and then everything within that, if you kind of want to launch into that. And then what I'm super interested in is your reflection model, which I'm sure you'll get to at some point. But
Yeah, sure. Our tokenomics, we have 250 million gang, which is our native coin. That is going to be capped. I do believe in that as a uh, metric for long-term, you know, I don't want to say stability because there's a lot more that comes into it when managing any sort of economic ecosystem. Um, but unlike, let's say, the US dollar, where they just print more, right? If we ever do need to split gang down the road, we'll be doing it more like a stock split. Not that we'd go to 500 million, but just as an example, if we did that, we would end up doubling everyone's holdings of gang just to lower the price. That's tokenomics, I think, are an interesting topic overall. Don't want to go too deep into all that. Initially, we're going to have about 60 million in supply, in circulating supply. If anyone cares about the tokenomics overall, check the white paper or our Git book and ask us questions. But I want to get to the reflections because I think that is super cool.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
The reflection. So, what was it? Safe Moon, I think, was actually one of the first projects that did reflections. And a lot of projects that do reflections or rebasing do it just as a hype thing. We don't generally advertise the fact that we have reflections with gang, right? It's in our white paper, we talk about it, but it's not something that we, make banners about or tons of social posts about or whatever. It's not like a selling point. Um, like a lot of things. I think people harp on hollow hype things too often and don't build enough substance. And we're doing things aggressively different with Gauss. Anyway, the reflections are a couple different things. One, they speak to our longer term goals with what we want to do with Gauss overall. A couple years after the reflections mechanism runs, we'll be writing a paper about it just to explore the potential of what a not means tested and means tested UBI system could look like in a transaction based ecosystem. Um, I think it'll be interesting data. It's not necessarily the best way to do it in a real world use case, but I think that information will help us build toward a better society that we do want to see. So the reflections mechanism, we take a percentage of, for now, the gas fees, in the long term, our transaction fees, and we redistribute it to all gang holders. Now, the incentive and mechanism design of that, it has to be a lower return than for staking liquidity, for example, but still sufficient to not be zero. There's two parts of that, by the way. So let's say 1% of, and it's not going to be 1%, but let's say 1% of a transaction of 100 gang, we would take one gang and split it across, if we have 100 holders, 100 holders would get half of that one gang. And then the other half, we actually weight heavier toward holders with smaller holdings, right? So if one person has 10 and one person has, or one person has 100 and one person has 10,000 gang in their wallets, right? You'd square them both, say one is 10, the other is 100. That's their weighting. And that's how we would distribute. It's just math. It's literally square root of X is how that distribution portion works. It's an elegant solution that works very similar to a reverse marginal tax rate almost. Really convoluted for saying, I think it's going to be awesome and give us a lot of information in the future. People get rewards the larger the ecosystem grows. And I think that's super cool because that speaks to another goal that I and we have of decentralizing revenue streams. That's something I want to see decentralized, right? Is revenue streams. I've talked about that before. Like if you take the nearly $1 trillion advertising market in the world and took 10% of that, it's actually 800 billion. So if you took that, that'd be $80 billion that we could run through rewards and loyalty programs and put directly into end users' hands. $80 billion transfer of wealth from the advertisers to end users. That's something I think should be decentralized, and that's a conversation I want to have. But anyway, all of that is stuff that's related to the reflections mechanism. There's a lot. There's a lot of those little things with everything we're doing with Gauss.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I mean, I think it's really cool that you're giving back to the smaller bags, and it avoids that, you know, the typical things you see where a whale comes in and buys it all up and they get all the rewards, everybody else gets diluted. And this is making it, it's giving a fair shake to those smaller entries and a fair opportunity. And while they, obviously, a large portion of it or half of it does go to, based off the how much they hold, that cutting that other piece and distributing it fairly is super cool. It incentivizes people to still hold large holdings, and then also doesn't deter all those smaller bags from coming in. Super fair, super well thought out.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, it's just not something we're advertising. The actual percentage that gets distributed will likely change over time. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. It's above my head to build something like that. So I can read about it and ask questions, but putting it all together, it's above my head. So I can only imagine. All right, so cool. I appreciate the breakdown. Kind of if you guys really want to dig into like the weeds of the tokenomics, right? Get on that link that I sent with the paper and kind of read through all that, and then go down and look at the math and how it's all broken down for the reflections token. That was something I was super intrigued by when I started reading through all this and putting this together. So I think you guys will like it too. All right, so next thing, let's talk about what you're going to be giving away at the end is kind of your NFTs, and then you know what are the incentives for the mentors?
Yes. So I think, I've said before, we're doing things aggressively different. I think token sales themselves are boring. There's also legal and regulatory issues around them. So we wanted to do an NFT sale. And I think it's interesting from a layer one perspective or from a protocol level perspective, to, sell a sort of membership pass, as it were. Like you don't need it to interact in the ecosystem, but those who have them will end up getting rewards over the length of Gauss, right? 10, 20, 30 plus years. So what they are, their first one is called Ferro cards, Ferro, like ferromagnetic. Ferris, we're nerds, by the way. Gauss, as in Gaussian distribution, or Carl Friedrich Gauss. So Ferro cards are magnets for rewards and keys to exclusive opportunities. That's the nice little prepackaged snippet that I repeat so often because I think it very neatly summarizes what they are and what we want them to be. There's 4 tiers of them: iron, nickel, cobalt, and chromium. The first 3 are broadly for the public at different price points and have varying returns, or not returns, rewards over the long term based on their tier. And we're also using, like I said before, to distribute gang. So I think that's interesting. But if I'm being honest, I think once once our community grows larger, I think people are going to look at it and say, well, yeah, I get 500 gang. That's really cool and awesome. But what about these rewards? Well, Dr. Dre or Metallica or whoever wants to launch a project with us, we might be able to take a chunk of their NFT and do giveaways with our NFT holders. Or Pepsi Coin launches and we give all NFT holders an airdrop of Pepsi Coin. It's a marketing thing for the brands and for the holders of those NFTs, it's just an awesome little bonus. And I think, that's super cool, especially when you play it out over 5, 10 plus years. And we're also giving away more of those same NFTs to NFT holders and have enough set aside to do that for 5 years. So our Iron tier, we have daily and weekly drawings for our Iron holders in our Discord community, and they're going to be winning those for 5 years. Like that's a lot. That's a long time that we've just, that's the scale we're looking at with everything we do with Gauss is 5, 10, 20 plus years. So I think that's super awesome and interesting. Thank you, Ferret, for posting the link. If definitely go check them out. It's how we're raising funds, or how we've been raising funds to build the team and start working on some other things. Yeah, that's that one. Or NFTs, we haven't launched yet. ORE. Again, we're nerds, so or NFT. Kind of like Noble, by the way. Noble Swap is noble metal, but also, noble in action. I think, the double meaning there is pretty awesome.
You guys are super into math and physics and some of
Yeah.
those other things I'm seeing.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
definitely
you referenced
biggest one.
Carl Friedrich Gauss. He's what was he, the foremost of mathematicians or whatever is what he was called, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he
Yeah.
is one of the most important individuals in math that most people have never heard of, especially. But that could also be said of a number of, Turkish mathematicians, Southern Asia, back when Europe was going through some weird times. Southern Asia was going through their mathematical renaissance until, religion trounced on knowledge. But yeah, we're all nerds. I think I'm probably the heaviest math nerd of the 4 co-founders, but yep. Anyway, or NFTs though are kind of a gamified means of again distributing more gang. We'll have more information on all that stuff coming out. And then another one that I've talked about briefly, I don't actually know if I've said it in an AMA. I'm really not sure. I know I've talked about it in our community, in our holders VC and things, but we have a 3D avatar series that we're going to be releasing with a partner. They already have it built and everything else. We're functionally launching a clone of what they have on Ethereum, or what they're launching on Ethereum on Gauss. And that's to be a vehicle for digital wearables. So imagine, name, no. So imagine Halloween. That's an easy one that's not branded that I can just say. Like Halloween, Spirit of Halloween, if they worked with us, or Hot Topic or whatever, could launch digital wearables. And I think it's super interesting, especially when you look at, like I said before, the ability to carry items or at least skins even between games. I just had a conversation this week with a game developer about this specifically, about a game that they're going to be working on, and saying, well, how could we do this with you? Would you be interested in allowing skins from this brand or this thing, or, in your game? What does that look like? What does it look like when you have a character wearing a band t-shirt from the real world in a game like Destiny, right? I think it's super interesting. So anyway, that's another one that we're launching. That one isn't intended to raise money. They're not going to be high dollar NFTs. They're not going to be limited. That 3D avatar series is something I want in 10 million users' hands, not 10,000 people's hands. So
Yeah, awesome. Awesome, yeah. I'm excited to see your when you release the 3D. And then just a quick thing, just so you can let everybody know, you guys are on Matic currently, right? Or
the
Polygon?
NFT, yeah. So
The NFTs, I mean.
yes, and we'll be migrating them over, and they'll be mintable on Gauss. Should be next month. But yes, they're presently mintable on Polygon, and that was largely in part because of the relationship with Sphere, again leading into their
Mhm.
community initially. It was just the easiest solution for their community. It wasn't a bad choice at all. As I've said, I'm a fan of Polygon, so made sense.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Awesome. Yeah. I appreciate. Do you have like an image of the Pharaoh cards that you could drop in the chat?
Ferret just linked the
What was it?
page, which I believe it has the videos. I think the video has
Oh,
the
okay.
image.
Okay, I'll
Um,
just watch the video
is
later.
Panda still here? Panda, can you drop an image of Pharaoh cards? Um, or anyone else that might have one? The image that's there right now, or the video, uh, GIF, whichever one you're looking at, is just the placeholder. It's not going to be the final. Here we go. Here, there's the thing on YouTube. That's what they look like for now.
Okay.
Um, I'm not
And then
overly. What's that?
what? So it's the Gauss symbol.
You're cutting out again.
Or, self-admit. Oh, great. How about now?
Back to normal for now.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. I kind of wanted to ask, since I obviously assume there's, with how well thought out you've done some other things and you're a self-admitted nerd, what is the meaning of the Gauss symbol?
So, buddy of mine who's actually a really phenomenal designer, works with a very large agency now, but he and I went back and forth about this. And originally, Gauss was just Gang Inc. Um, we had some pushback from different people that we talked to about it. Lauren and Austin are actually the ones who came up with Gauss first. Um, and I fell in love with it pretty quickly. But it really helped, like bringing Gauss as the name, because originally we wanted to go with an anagram of Gauss, and it just wasn't working. Anyway, I was like, okay, so the idea of magnetism, bringing a community together, how do we visualize that? And this is where we came up with it. So it's kind of like, yes, I've heard multiple people like, yeah, it kind of looks like atomy, like an atom, and I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see that. But it was more like magnetic fields and drawing people in together to be a community. Like that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, cool,
And on the
cool. Yeah,
numbers side of things, there are a lot of these because of the price of them. But just a funny thing that I don't know. I know I mentioned it probably not a long time, but the iron tier, there's 24,680 of them because I thought it was great. 24680. I thought that was great. And then nickel, there's 6789. Cobalt, there's 2345. Because those are great numbers. Just
yeah, you love your math, that's for sure.
Yep. So
There we
what's
go.
your next question? What's
All
the
right.
next topic?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's get. Sorry, I had to pull this back up. I was kind of I had it muted. I was kind of watching the little turn in the background. I like it. It's like simple, but it's super cool, and it's like appealing to the eye. All right, yeah. So I guess my next question is really just about your roadmap, the progress you made, or what you got coming, what people can be looking forward to.
Yes. So we launched in November and did not continue on with the launch because we had issues with the permissioning system. So if you look at the roadmap on the site, we're actually, I think, in stage 4 or phase 4. It's been a while since this is terrible, but when you've done it long enough, yeah. So um, we've already launched, but we are relaunching this month to fix an issue that existed with the permissioning system. That's why we haven't launched anything on Gauss. Just things happen, especially when you only have one developer. Austin, phenomenal developer. I'm semi-technical. I can code, but he's the driving force behind all of our technical side. So yeah, that answers that on phase 4. We haven't released the new updated roadmap that includes everything beyond. Internally, we have a roadmap that goes beyond 2025, but the further you go out in things, the more targets skew, right? Like we could be off by 6 months or more. So we need to launch or release our new roadmap sometime this quarter. But yeah, we're in the launch phase. We're about to start our equity fundraising round, which will be interesting. And then start launching projects on Gauss like immediately. We already have a couple. I see Cletus in here, and you've already mentioned CryptoLink. That's not something we've kept secret. We're launching their NFTs on Gauss, and we'll have a paper bridge with Gauss, and we'll be available with any to any. We have some other projects that'll be launching with Gauss pretty soon, and a lot of other conversations still in the works. So, like, we're already beyond the released roadmap thus far.
Oh yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to reading the revised one and seeing what you guys come out with next, and seeing as it rolls out.
We're in
I think
phase
this
4,
is
not beyond it. Sorry.
yeah. Oh, that's cool. I think you guys have I don't know, really, I think you got a really great project here. So I am really excited to see that stuff play out for you. So, all right, let's get some of these audience questions. Feel free, Gary, if you want to scroll through the AMA chat just above the Raider stage and see if
Yep.
you see anything you really want to answer. The one that I liked,
I
that I
see
wanted to answer.
1 second. I see 8 questions. Was that all of them? I'm asking Panda because he's the one who was keeping track of this during the AMA.
Yeah, it looks
I see
about
another
like that.
one
Yeah.
from Cams. So which one did you want to hit first?
So, 1 second. Sorry, I had to cough. Didn't want to do that in your ear. So I kind of like this question from Cam33 because we ask a ton of questions about projects and what they're doing for, providing education and stuff like that. But his question is, what have you learned from your Crypto 101 series and other educational efforts about public perception, and how are you applying those insights to Gauss to make it more approachable?
Oh man, can you paste that question in here so I can read the whole thing? Oh wait, right here. What have you learned from Crypto 101 series and other educational efforts about public perception and how we're applying? Okay, so public perception of blockchain technology, the crypto industry, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely terrible. I'll go back to my statement earlier that end users don't care. Your mom does not give a single. I don't. Do you cuss in your AMAs? I cuss a lot. They don't give a fuck
Oh,
about
go for it.
blockchain technology,
You
or
wouldn't be a
any of
Marine
that.
if you didn't.
Yeah, I think I've done pretty well this one. I usually don't give a damn, but every now and
No,
then I
I don't.
do try. But yeah, so I think it's important to educate the public about the technology. I think it's important to inform the public and educate them on the use cases and best practices and safety measures and all of those things. But the idea that we all need to really start rallying around is the second grade mentality. Like that's how you make it more approachable is you need to not have the necessary steps to educate people. They should just be able to interact with it. How much education does anyone go through today on how to use the internet, how to type? Right? These are just things we do now. Like I went through typing classes back in the day, but like I don't know, do kids still do that? I don't think so. I imagine not. Maybe they do. But like you don't go through how to email. Like that was the thing. That was the topic. So I think the right answer to that is get to a point where we don't need to educate it. So it's just in the background. It just works. That's where I think we need to get. What have I learned though? I don't know. That's a really tough one to answer the first part of your question. I hope you don't think I'm copping out on it. I consume a lot of information, so yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's a good answer. It's a good answer.
There's a lot of people that actively root against crypto. Same thing. Look up Google Mark Maron, or just look at my Twitter feed. I just posted it again recently. He was a comic, is still a comic, great comedian, but years and years ago, talked tons of shit about the internet, lots of it. So much so that it's still referenced today, and I use it to reference people that are talking shit about crypto and blockchain. Like, yeah. Sorry for cutting you off, Relentless. I was just
Oh no,
responding to what Sam's just said.
you're you're good to go. It's I'm here to talk to you, hear from you. All right, where
So do
is
you
my
just want to
Discord?
work down from the top? So I see
Say
one
that
from
again.
Andy. I said, do you want to work down the list from the top?
Yeah, just whichever one. There's a few of them that we've already covered, so it's really if you see anything that catches your eye that you want to ask or that you want to answer.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I answered Andy R's question. However, I will say that we're not doing KYC. I'm actually trying to actively take a stance against KYCing within Gauss. I don't want Gauss to be the fiat on or off ramp. So I'm hoping to avoid that as a necessary step. I don't actually care what the identities are of the end users for Gauss. I don't think end users cause the most harm or fraud or participate in, launching the most scams or anything. It's the people behind projects. That's who we need to know their identities. Um, it's going to be a fight down the road. We're already seeing lots of legislation in the US and elsewhere trying to push toward that direction. But yeah, we care about KYB, not KYC. So I hope that answers your question, Andy. We've got one from Logus. Gauss is open to both physical and digital creators. Does Gauss have solutions to protect the copyrights of the creators and prevent the different brands from being copied? So as I said earlier, we're a gated and curated ecosystem. By preventing people from launching, we won't be allowing them to launch, copyrighted material. It's going to be a challenge once we work on an art platform. Like that'll be a very large hurdle to overcome to automate that process. Like, how does an artist create an NFT? And how do we verify that that's not copyrighted? Maybe that is something that we don't even touch in the next 3 to 5 years. It's likely going to take a very sophisticated AI solution to identify that, to automate that process. And before that happens, it would have to be a fully manual process. So um, we'll see. For now, we're just manually not allowing anything that breaches copyright. Let's see. Did you want to ask the questions, or do you just want me to run through them like I'm doing Relentless?
No, that's fine because I mean anything you see that you really want to speak about. I don't want to rehash anything we talked about earlier.
No,
So
I
just
don't
anything you
mind.
see
I
in there.
actually, there's only a handful of them, so I don't mind hitting each one of them and, potentially elaborating. So this one's also from, is it Cammy's?
It
I
looks
don't
like
know.
Cam
Cam,
30, yeah, Cam
Cam
33 SS.
33 SS. I'm going to say Cammy's. That's what I think it is. Positioning and branding seem to be critical for driving adoption of chains and protocols. Oh, and then we go into the next part. We already answered that one. So
Yep.
on to the next. Um, let's see. We've got this one from Logus. Gauss is open to both physical and digital creators? Question mark. Yes. Do we have solution? Oh, I just answered that one. Jesus. I have a list on one screen and then Discord on this
Yeah,
screen with chat, and then the other Discord on my other screen with our actual AMA
yeah,
stage. So
too many screens. How about this one here from Cam again? Some chains are known for focusing completely on tech, and others are known for focusing completely on business development and marketing. How do you approach the balance between these two sides of the coin in the early stages of Gauss?
So we focus on the business development and marketing first. Like that's part of the reason our go-to-market strategy is working with artists, musicians, that is, because we can execute those deals much quicker. The tech side of things takes time. Even just our initial launch, we had some road bumps. We got the blockchain launched. Everything would have worked fine for the next 6+ months. We could have launched. Nobody would have known anything different, uh, but it would have created headaches down the road, and we might have had to relaunch 6 months down the road. So tech side of things is always going to take longer, especially for some of our larger ambitions like that AI translation layer that I mentioned earlier. That's going to take years likely to develop. We're just now seeing the earliest stages of that tech even being possible, and people have been working on it for years. Um, yeah, we're going to focus first on bringing lots of projects in and building toward Gauss 2.0, and then building larger pillars over time. Hope that answers that one. So the next one that I see, yeah, it's just messed up. Sorry, I got stumbled on those last couple. Next one is also from Logus. Should we consider Gauss a platform that also tries to attract talented collaborators, designers, and artists who can bring experience to the team and help development of Web3? Yes. Yes, we are a platform looking to attract talented collaborators, designers, and artists. On the artist side, I'm still not sure, like I said, what the solution's going to be for broad use by smaller content creators or artists. But short answer to your question, Logus, yes. Let's see, Dev. Okay, Dev's got a couple questions here. First one, you like our curation vetting, which will weed out bad actors. Would Gauss also look into that? Another issue with DeFi space is sustainability. I'm not sure what you mean, Dev123, about sustainability specifically. If you're talking about the sustainability of like sustaining a community or the sustainability of a economic ecosystem, different answers. Yeah, I'm trying to. Or do you guys plan to incorporate that into your curation and vetting process? So I'm curious which portion of sustainability you're asking about, because there's a few different. You could be talking about ESG even. Um, I think you're probably asking about tokenomics though, or sustainability of an ecosystem or a project, how to create a thriving one. Look at Axie Infinity, for example. Great example. They're still around. They're still doing millions in revenue a day. But they do not have a long-term sustainable model. They have a long-term hyperinflationary model with no real checks or balances in place, right? They have a poorly designed game loop, and no long-term sustainability ever designed into their ecosystem. So I think that's something we look at in our design phase with these projects wanting to launch with Gauss, something we can identify in a tokenomics review. And then, if they need remedial assistance, we can work on that with them. Hope that answers that one. Next one you had also from Dev123. Can you please elaborate? How would the incentive and rewards program work in the Gauss ecosystem? And how is it different from Web 2.0 incentive and rewards programs? So, I think two parts to this. One, I don't think we'll have the best answers to that for a while. I think new and interesting ideas will continue to come about, much in the same way that when electricity was invented, nobody had conceptualized a computer or electric guitar. So I think more things will come down the road that'll be really interesting. For now, though, it's not going to be much different from Web 2.0, except it'll be where users actually own them themselves, whatever those incentives or rewards are, that NFT or that token or whatever. Um, End users don't actually own frequent flyer miles right now or rewards points on any card. You have them tied to your account, but those businesses aren't beholden to anything if you dig into their toss. Um, so I think the interesting thing here is the ability for people to swap, trade, buy, sell, whatever the incentives and rewards of those different groups, right? There's going to be Taylor Swift fans that forever want anything she does and will go buy them up. And it's likely that, Taylor Swift's marketing team or digital team would miss target with some of them, and they land in the wrong hands. Or they land in hands of people who are Taylor Swift fans but want to sell them because there's sufficient demand, that supply demand curve. So it'll very much operate similar to 2.0 for now, evolve over time. Your next question, Dev123, will Gauss offer to pull companies and projects to the chain? Are we looking to change previous commitments like Disney to Polygon? Will the chain look to be ESG compliant to draw attention? So 3 more questions from you. First part, what are we doing to pull projects and companies on chain? Projects, offering the liquidity incentive, I think, is not insignificant. Being able to, for small projects, launch $500,000, $1 million, whatever we want to do, liquidity for them based on their needs, I think is significant. I think protecting the projects and their communities is significant. I think our unique selling proposition there is the answer to that question as well. We are a curated ecosystem. If they want to launch in a higher quality place where people aren't going to get scammed, where there's not going to be a project that's exactly cloning what they're doing, we're that place. We'll also be announcing a grant program for new projects at some point in the near future. We already have that amount determined and everything. Yeah. Are we looking to change previous commitments like Disney to Polygon? In the long term, yes. I think Disney's not a great example. Disney also doesn't have a commitment to Polygon. They're going to be testing waters and launching a pilot with Polygon. And Polygon joined a cohort in an accelerator of Disney. So there's not like a marriage there or anything. It's kind of like they're communicating before even dating. And Disney, the other reason I think it's a bad example is because Disney's going to have its own blockchain ecosystem. I suspect companies that size, that scale, Disney especially, would 100% have their own blockchain, inevitably. I fully think that's the way that's going to work out. Because once we look far enough down the road, they're going to tie it directly with Disney Plus, their in-person experiences, they have a broad range of IP. And then once we get into metaverses and things, they'll have their own corner of the universe of metaverses. I suspect them to own all of that down the road. Will we be ESG compliant? We already are. Gauss is currently and will forever be one of the most energy efficient blockchains just by nature of design. We don't need 100,000 validators. Binance has 21 validators. We have less for now. So we are already ESG compliant. And after the ecosystem runs for a while, we'll likely come out with some information about how much power is used per 1,000 transactions. But ESG compliance to me is another vanity metric that we're not really going to be advertising. It's an answer. It'll be a little bullet point in our materials or our papers somewhere. It's not a selling point, in my opinion. It's a vanity metric that too many people use to create hype, just like transaction speed or transactions per second. So All right, we got 2 more questions from Cam. Camies. Have I lost you, Relentless? Are you still here? Just have me muted while
No,
I
I'm just
ramble on.
listening. I'm just listening. I mean, you have great thought out responses, so I'm just letting you go through them and paying attention.
All right. So Cami says, after what happened with Sol, feels like there's a bit of a community backlash against VC chains or corporate chains. Has been challenging to mold your image around this, considering the companies get gang allocation and NFT whitelists. For your vesting schedule seems like it would really help with that. So I fully agree with you. And it goes back to my point earlier, talking about decentralized chains and projects and whatnot not really being decentralized. We're doing a very small initial raise, um, and we're not looking to raise a ton of money from too few people, right? The fourth tier that I didn't really talk too much about, the Chromium NFTs earlier, those are intended for larger net worth individuals or institutional buyers, right? They have a limit of 4 per person. So they're $25,000 a piece. That's a $25,000 to $100,000 check from any buyer. That's the limit. We had an interested party that wanted to buy $1 million worth of those NFTs to obtain that gang over 4 years, because they have a 4-year allocation, 5% of their allocation spread across 20 months. Anyway, they wanted to buy up $1 million worth of them and bring in a second party to buy up another million. And I said no, because that would give too large an impact in our ecosystem in 5 years, right? So I think that's our view on it, is we need money to build the team, to build the tech, to market, to land some of these deals. Like, it costs a not insignificant amount of money to pitch large companies. Not you're paying them directly, but you have to approach them with polished presentation. So, um, yeah, but I don't want, you know, I don't want large controlled interests in Gauss, period, for exactly that point. We'll likely have another round later where we raise significantly more money, or when Gauss is worth $1 billion and we sell off another 10% equity or whatever, like a normal tech company. But yeah, not anything like what you see in most other chains. So I hope that answers that one. Last one, also from Cammy's. Does liquidity still come from users for that Omni pool? Is it strictly a decentralized concept? So both. We will forever be adding to liquidity because it just builds stronger, more stable ecosystem. But users will have an option to stake and will get rewarded for staking. Once we get to the Omni pool, though, we get to do single asset staking. So rather than pairing like Gang and USDC, they'll be able to just put in USDC or just Gang or any other token and get the single liquidity token out of that ecosystem. So it's a bit different in how that all works. I'm really looking forward to, again, testing that, rolling it out, and everything else. But hope that answers that question, Candies. Both. Yeah. So that's all the questions. It's been a while since I've worked through all the community questions. Did it once, long time ago with Obsidian. But yeah.
I appreciate you going through them, getting back to all the audience members. They stuck around and appreciate that a lot. All right. Well, what was your favorite one? Who wins the NFT?
I don't make those decisions. I don't play
Oh,
favorites. Panda, you get to make the call.
oh, there we go. All right. Yeah, let's pawn it off on Panda.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, that's why you have a team, though, right?
Yep.
Tap into the team. Yeah, I have not chosen a winner for anything. Yep. I prefer to wash my hands of that decision in the process.
That's totally fair. Yeah, I think Cam winning might be the the best solution there, as Sean Call said. Anyways, for having 5 really in-depth
Well,
questions. I think
whoever ends up winning, just know that all reward NFTs are being sent to users or holders, winners, whatever. Once we hit 15,000 sold, we're doing that so we don't flood the market with a bunch of free one NFTs. Right, we want to hit a
mhm.
point where there's sufficient demand before releasing that many. So, um, whoever is the winner, if Pandas, I see you still here, so might have stepped away. But whoever ends up being decided, if you want to say Cam Relentless, you can totally choose. Just open a ticket on our Discord, and they will add you to the list. We have a list of giveaway winners. We'll get your wallet address and all that fun info. So this has been awesome. Been a minute since I've, uh, or I say been a minute. It's been like a week since I've done an AMA.
Yeah. Well, a week in DeFi is a long time. Or-
Yeah, it's
So
only been 2 weeks since I think, a couple weeks maybe, a few weeks. I don't know. It's been a 2, 3 weeks since I've done one outside of our community, and I did one I think last week. Time is very weird overall right now.
yeah, agreed. Well, yeah, I think my vote goes for Cam. A lot of really well thought out, in-depth questions. Um, that focused on a bunch of different areas. So I'm just gonna pick, since Panda didn't give a response, I'm gonna pick Cam. So Cam, yeah, hop in the Discord and submit a ticket.
Yeah. Thanks again
And
for having me on.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for your time. This has been awesome. It honestly didn't feel like 2 hours. I mean, you're really
I just
knowledgeable. Um, yeah, yeah. My wife walked in. I told you. I told she was going to yell at me. She gave me a look, and I was like,
you
I'll
got
be
wife
done in a minute.
aggro. My bad.
Yeah, nah, it's all good. Like I said, what you gonna do? Divorce me? Um, So, anyways, yeah. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you for all the in-depth answers and the great knowledge and what you guys are doing. A really big fan of your team and what you're building over there. A shout out to CryptoLink guys for mentioning you and bringing you up so I could reach out to you and get you on. And really excited to see what you guys got coming. And again, just thanks so much for your time.